The possibility of peace in Israel and the conversation that took place today, a short while ago, between President Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu, highlighting the positive strides being taken. These aren't just little paces, these are strides. These are huge, momentous steps. And it's a historic moment in the final days of Joe Biden's time in office. The possibility of critical progress in the Gaza peace talks would leave his tenure as a positive period in advance of Trump's arrival, and a phone call that symbolises cooperation and in the middle of all this turmoil, emphasising diplomacy as a cornerstone of international relations must be a good thing and must set the tone for the sort of conversations that might take place between Putin and Trump. And from Hamas's attack on Israel in October 2023 on the 7th to Israel's military response and the ongoing humanitarian crisis, these have to be thought of really as separate but interconnected events. The attack on Israel on October the 7th needs to be absolutely condemned. The military response was legitimate. A country has a right to defend itself. But the military response went too far, and that needs to be condemned as well, particularly given the humanitarian crisis that it's caused, the 46,000 lives lost in Gaza, the widespread displacement, the population eager for relief. And Biden's call for an immediate ceasefire to halt the devastation in Gaza is a step forward, but a ceasefire is not peace. The hostage release and the talk about that symbolising hope and symbolising the framework for peace. Now, that is a possibility. Biden's push for increased humanitarian aid, contingent on a truce, is also a step forward. But the reports that there is a final draft agreement mediated by Qatar involving Israel, Hamas, and key international actors. This is something to celebrate if it's genuine. There needs to be cautious optimism. There needs to be encouragement by both the US and the Israeli officials regarding the potential for a ceasefire as a means to peace, not a ceasefire on its own. And the high-level delegations from Mossad, the Biden administration, mediators working towards actionable solutions suggests progress rather than simply rhetoric. And Netanyahu's conversation with Biden today, his acknowledgement of Biden's steadfast support, but the recognition from Biden of the changed regional circumstances, such as a ceasefire in Lebanon and Syria's political shifts, underscore a transformed Middle Eastern dynamic, and the symbolism of the outgoing and the incoming US administrations align with the urgency for peace. And the disagreements within Netanyahu's coalition, with far-right members resisting any ceasefire that doesn't dismantle Hamas entirely, and the lingering questions about the scope of any sort of truce. Will it extend to a full ceasefire or remain a limited geographically limited process? If it's part of a process, that must be a good thing. If it's a standalone truce, maybe it's not going to advance much further. But a truce is a start. A truce and a ceasefire, it's a start. And if hostage negotiations are part of that process, at the moment a sticking point, balancing the release of captives with long-term security, at least conversations are going on. And remarks from the foreign minister, the Israeli foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar, about progress are something I think to be hopeful about. Biden's consistent advocacy of a phased ceasefire as a practical starting point is a good benchmark of reason over rhetoric, and the significance of this agreement before Trump's inauguration would be a positive for Biden's administration. How a truce might affect relations with Iran, Hezbollah, and Syria, that is a bigger question, and the opportunity to address Gaza's dire needs after months of siege and conflict is something that the international community needs to gather together and direct itself to secure. But the legacy, the enduring legacy of Biden's diplomatic approach in his final days of office to be dedicated to this is something that actually reminds me very much of Carter's efforts to sort out the Iran siege. He wasn't successful. I hope Biden will be. It's a moment of cautious hope. Biden's call with Netanyahu represents a step towards resolution in one of the most protracted and painful conflicts of our time. And the shared goal of peace, even with the challenges, and the role of diplomacy in turning the tide from devastation to reconstruction, this is something that can be supported by the world community. As history looks back on this chapter, the efforts of leaders, mediators, and citizens alike may redefine what's possible in the pursuit of peace, even in a complex environment like the Middle East. So the aim would be a ceasefire that leads to lasting peace, not simply a ceasefire on its own. Calling for a ceasefire is an immature call. Calling for a ceasefire that leads to peace is a serious goal.